My name is Michal Hatuel-Radoshitzky. I work here at INSS, the Institute for National Security Studies in Israel. I research, I'm a PhD candidate at Tel Aviv University, just across the road from here, in political science, and I'm writing my PhD about state stigmatization in the international arena. Well, Israel is undergoing quite a negative campaign, I think, in the international arena. Here in the INSS, I'm researching the BDS movement, Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions movement, which is modeled after the South African AAM, anti-apartheid movement, which existed in the 1980s until 1990s when South Africa became a multiracial democracy. The BDS movement is modeled after the AAM, the South African movement, and that's what I'm researching, to understand how this movement is impacting Israel, if at all, and what the repercussions of this movement's work is. At the outset of my words, I will say that Israel is not an apartheid state, unlike the stigma that Israel is, or that the BDS movement is attempting to impose upon Israel. The main difference is that Israel is a democracy, and it's a democracy that's engaged in a self-determination conflict. South Africa was also engaged in a self-determination conflict, but South Africa was obviously not a democratic state. De facto and de jure, South Africa was an apartheid regime. It was based, the regime was based on race. There was the Lands Act, the Group Areas Act, the Population Registration Act, which treated different citizens according to their skin color in different measures. So if I was a white South African and I would drive my car anywhere and I wanted to fuel, to put petrol in the car, and I went to the petrol station, there was a whites-only bathroom and there was a blacks bathroom. If I wanted to go to the cinema or if I wanted to use public transportation, these things were separate. I went to a school, I was educated in South Africa, whites only. So in that respect, obviously Israel and South Africa are very different, completely different. I think that a lot of the attempt to impose the apartheid stigma is based in ignorance. There is a lack of understanding of the complexities of the situation that Israel is found in. Having said that, we obviously have a problem. We're in a situation where we're in a self-determination conflict with the Palestinians for many years, for many decades. We're preventing the Palestinian nation, people, with their own state or their own their aspirations to an independent state. For various reasons, maybe some are justified, some aren't. I'm not going into that, but obviously you can understand where the seed of the stigma is coming from. And I think that perhaps the main difference also, if you look at the South African conflict and the Israeli conflict, is that whereas in Israel and with the Palestinians, we want to separate, and we need two separate states, a state for Palestinians and a state for Israelis, in South Africa, we had to learn to live with each other. The idea was to have one rainbow state where everyone can live together. And that is also a central difference between the ANC, which led the anti-apartheid movement and anti-apartheid ideals, to what we have here with the BDS. Whereas the ANC charter and the struggle for freedom of the black people in South Africa was very mindful of the white population in South Africa. The ANC Charter caters for the white population. It reflects South Africa where everyone can live together. It refers to freeing the white man from the shackles of apartheid. What we see here with the BDS movement particularly is a will to impose Palestinian land on the entire area. There's no reference to the security of Israelis or to the aspirations of Israelis to have a homeland for the Jewish people, and so forth. I think at the end of the day, we have to see how this is affecting Israel, not only at the bottom line, at the balance of Israel's trade and so forth, but really Israel's image in the international arena, how we are seen, which I think affects a lot of fields that it's very difficult to measure by numbers. How do you measure strong power? Do you measure strong power on the campuses? Is strong power for Jews not to feel safe and secure in campuses? Is strong power legislation? Is strong power boycotting? Or perhaps when Israeli artists go around the world, which countries they suffer the most from disturbances? Or perhaps one of the central power areas is when artists want to come to Israel and then they undergo attacks. So it's very difficult to measure. I looked at Israel in South Africa, and I looked to see how they have been perceived in the international arena in different eras. Obviously South Africa in the 1980s, and Israel, we're experiencing the problem today. And I tried to flesh out specific things that are in common to both states and things that are different. I think that what happens with the Israeli case is that we have three things that are working against us. The first thing is that we're locked in a self-determination conflict with the Palestinians. The second thing is that there is a very active civil society which is operating in a very strategic manner to boycott Israel, to impose a stigma on Israel in the international arena. It does this systematically. It's a movement that's been learning from its mistakes and has been consistently engaged in the learning process and improving its tactics. And the third thing is that there is a lot of media attention. The world is very interested to know what's happening here for various reasons. There's extensive media engagement in our conflict and in what's happening here. Those are perhaps three things that are working against us. What's working for us, and this South Africa didn't have when it was completely stigmatized, is the first thing is the very, very strong US-Israel alliance. Israel is also a strategic asset for the United States in this region, and we are certainly benefiting from a very important strategic relationship for both sides. By the way, South Africa and the United States also had a very close relationship until the AAM completely managed to sabotage it, and President Reagan had to abide by the different both Republicans and Democrats that managed to pass the CAAA, which is the Comprehensive Anti-Apartheid Act. That happened in 1985, and then the United States was actually forced to, against President Reagan's will, was forced to sanction South Africa. And then the world aligned behind that, and the Brits and Japan and so forth. And then it's like a pile of cards that went down, and South Africa was heavily stigmatized. So that we're not there. And then the other thing that we have working for us is the moral grounding. As I said at the outset of my words, Israel is a democracy, de facto, de jure. You can speak, perhaps it's not a perfect democracy, there's perhaps discrimination, there's a lot of other faults, but Israel is a democracy and it's not an apartheid state. Those are the two things we have working for us. I think that the most meaningful and effective action is Israel's engagement in negotiations or in active, proactive steps towards a two-state solution, which is the internationally agreed upon solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Our Prime Minister Netanyahu, has said in the past that he's for that solution, and I think Israel needs to take active steps and show not only a will, I can't find a better word than just simply a proactive attitude, take measures on the ground, and I think that will open a lot of doors, and it will literally pull the rug under the feet of anti-Israel people who are claiming that we don't want to do anything other than conquer and occupy. The idea of a confederation is an interesting idea. It's something that needs to be explored. Ultimately, the two-state solution, I think, is the best solution, because I think that Palestinians need their independence. Israel also needs to have secure borders, and it's an internationally agreed upon and recognized solution. If, at the end of the day, the two sides, not America, and not Israelis and Palestinians, will decide together that the best situation, that the win-win situation here is a confederation, then so be it. As long as both nations have an independent state, have secure and recognized borders that either side is capable of protecting, I think that's where the issue is. I think there's been a perception for very long that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict affects the entire region, that it affects the stability of the entire region. We've seen lately what's happening in our neighbor Syria, that there's a lot of things, regional trends, ISIS, we have a lot of different phenomena that have come up and have sprung up completely detached from what's happening to the Israeli and Palestinian sides. I don't doubt that it certainly is a key issue in the region's stability, but it's not the only issue. The media focuses on our story, I think, because it's a drama, it's interesting, and it's a story that's running for a very, very long time. And as such a story, it's interesting. I think also Israel is obviously, just as South Africa, by the way, is very different from its regional neighbors, and that attracts a lot of interest. So there's always been anti-Semitism, and there will always be anti-Semitism. And a lot of what fuels the BDS is anti-Semitism, but it's not only that. It's certainly, I do certainly believe that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the conflict for self-determination that we are engaged in for so long without anything or any process at the moment, also for a very long time, is something that fuels the international environment vis-à-vis Israel.